In this lesson, I will show you some more settings about printing a worksheet. I will talk about gridlines, row and column headings, how to request that one or more rows print at the top of every page, or one or more columns print on the left side of every page, and how to print your data with a specific alignment within the page. Let's begin with gridlines. Gridlines are those somewhat faint lines that separate the rows and columns. That way you can see where its cell is. By default, these lines do not print. I'm not referring to the borders that you can add to some cells. If you add borders, those will be printed without needing the setting I'm about to show you. Let's take a closer look in practice. I will select cells D4 to F4 and open the borders tool to choose all borders here. I think it's clear that the borders and grid lines are two different things. I will open the File tab and choose Print here. You can see that only one cell with a border is visible because the other cells are in the next page. I will click on the Orientation tool and select the Landscape Orientation to see all the columns in the same page. So grid lines do not print, but borders are printed by default. I will return to the worksheet with the back arrow and I will open the Page Layout tab. In the Sheet Options palette, there is the Grid Lines section. I can see the grid lines in the worksheet because the View option is checked. I will uncheck it, so the grid lines are not visible in the worksheet, but that has nothing to do with printing. I will check again the View checkbox and I will also check the Print checkbox. Now that the print option is checked, the grid lines will be printed. I will go to the File tab and select Print, and I think it's obvious that the grid lines are printed. Notice two things. When some cells have borders defined, the borders are printed and not the grid lines. Also notice that if a background color is selected, like in column B or in the first row, then those cells, the grid lines also do not print. I need to set borders if I want lines to be printed when there is a background color. So to make the grid lines print, it's just an option here. Just make sure you check the print option because the view option is for what is visible on the screen. Now let's look at printing row and column headings. To understand what they are, I will uncheck the view option for the headings. Notice that now the line numbers and column letters are no longer visible. I will check again the view option and now I can see them again. By default, these are not printed, but I can change that by pressing the print option for the headings. Let's see now how it will be printed. You can see that the lines and the line numbers and the column letters will also be printed on paper. Let's now see how you can repeat one or more rows at the top of every page of every page that is printed. Let's say that I want the first row, which has the data headers, to be printed on each page. See now that on the rest of the pages, they just print the rest of the lines of the data. They don't print the first line again and again. I will go back to the worksheet and from the page setup palette, I will click on the print titles tool. The option that I want is the rows to repeat at top, so I will click on the button with the upward arrow and now I can select the rows that will be printed at the top of every page. I will choose the first row and in the window that is still open, I will click the same arrow I clicked before, but now it appears as a downward arrow. So I have requested that the first row always be printed at the top of every page. I can go directly to the print preview with the button that is here, so I will just click on the print preview button and see what it turned out. There is no difference on the first page, but I will move to the second page and notice that the first row is printed again at the top. I will move to the third page and I have the first row printed at the top again. I can select any row to be printed at the top of each page, not just the first row. I will exit here with the back arrow and click again on the print titles button. In the rows to repeat at the top, I will click again on the button with the upward arrow, and this time I will click on row 3 and drag to select row 4 as well. I will click the button with the arrow again and go to print preview. On the first page, there is no difference because rows 3 and 4 already exist in the page. Moving to the second page, notice that the rows 3 and 4 are printed at the top and then the rest of the data starts. Moving to the third page, the same thing happens. This means that I can choose any rows I want to be printed at the top of every page. You may have noticed that all this is similar to freezing rows at the top of the worksheet when working on the screen. It is indeed the same logic, but for printing. There is although a difference. When freezing rows for the screen, you can freeze a number of rows from the top. For example, you can freeze rows 1 to 3. However, I can't freeze rows 3 and 4 when I'm talking about freezing rows for the screen. But when it comes to printing rows at the top of every page, you can do that as I showed you a moment earlier. Of course, this all works for columns that I want to be printed on the left side of every worksheet. I will exit here with the back arrow and click on the Print Titles tool. In the columns to repeat that left setting, I will click again on the button with the upward arrow. I will select column A and click again on the same button with the arrow, and I will go to the print preview. Moving to the second page, I don't see anything special, and moving to the third page, it's the same. This happens because now all my data fits within the width, so no pages are printed with columns to the right. I will open the orientation tool and select portrait orientation. Moving to the next page, here I see the data going down, okay. Moving to the third page, now I see the data of columns E and F from the first rows, but notice that column A appears because I have set it to repeat on the left side of every page. Moving to the fourth page, I see the same thing happens here. The last setting I want to talk about concerns how you can center a data area on the printed page. For this to be visible, the data area must not extend across the entire page as it does now. Therefore, I will choose to print only a specific area. I will exit with the back arrow and select the area from A1 to D8. Now I will open the print area tool and select to the set print area. Okay, great. Now from the File tab, I will go to Print, and as you already know from a previous lesson, only the specified area is printed. However, this area is printed in the top left corner of the page. Let's say that I want it to be printed in the center of the page. I will close this window and click the tool to open the page setup dialog box palette. I will move to the margins tab, and in the bottom left corner there are settings to center the data on the page. I will activate both horizontal and vertical, and I will click on print preview. Now the data will be printed centered on the page. It might seem like a lot, but from a practical point of view, all these settings are in the Page Layout tab and in the Sheet Options palette for the grid lines and headings, and in the Page Setup palette for printing the rows at the top or columns at the right of every printed page. All these settings are also included in the dialog box of the Page Setup palette. I will open the Page Setup dialog box, and in the Sheet tab and the Print area are the settings for grid lines and row and column headings. These are the same settings as the print settings in the Sheet column options palette. In the same window, there are the rows to repeat at top and the columns to repeat at left, and in the margins tab you can find the center on page options. So remember that you can find all printing options in the Page Setup dialog box in the different tabs that are here. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching.